SABC, together with the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, bring you the final verdict. In the pursuit of justice, we are all equal before the law. These are some of the stories that have led to the final verdict. The right to equality is enshrined in our Constitution. Anyone who uses their position of power in the workplace to harass or discriminate against a colleague will find no sympathy in a court of law.
South Africa has recently come out of a period where discrimination was rife, where harassment went unchecked, and hate speech was the order of the day. This type of conduct is inimical to a properly functioning society that is built on a constitutional basis of equality.
Equality, human dignity, non-sexism. There are certain founding values of the Constitution. Equality is one which is both a founding principle, but it is also a right.
Well, we discriminate all the time. We distinguish, and the law doesn't prohibit that. It recognizes that in our day-to-day lives, we almost constantly make decisions actively that discriminate, that distinguish. What the law prohibits is unfair discrimination. And unfair discrimination would be where there is no legal or justifiable basis for discriminating.
I almost forgot. Yazi, we need to toast to your internship.
Oh, thanks, but I don't drink.
Come on. It's just a little celebrated. Yes, now you're funeral.
But I don't think I should stay.
I'm your boss. That's an order. Yeah,
It's just I think I should go.
I will just relax. Yes, and don't look at this as a good career move. He's a man. Hey, I wouldn't do that if I were you.
The Constitution guarantees against discrimination on the basis of gender. It protects them from conduct such as sexual mutilation, such as rape, and a most common crime of sexual harassment. Most people do not appreciate that sexual harassment is offensive and that it is an offense, and it may not be perpetrated against women.
In South Africa, we have created a formal environment where women can get into any positions, into any areas of power and control in society. But the institutions remain extremely sexist and extremely patriarchal. So we can sit all of us in the boardroom, but the boardroom is still, by and large, defined around the patriarchal ethos. If I chair, as a female, the board of directors of a company, I become, therefore, the person who cannot be touched because I have certain authority within that parameter, limited as it might be, perhaps. But the junior executive who works in that institution, it doesn't have the same protection.
We still have those challenges where we find other men not accepting that women play the same role that they can play in the society. You find that a male boss, there is a certain position that is advertised within the institution. For a woman to get that position, sometimes you'll find that she can be denied even if she qualified for that position. She can be denied not being given that position on the basis that maybe she refused to accede to certain demands that are not even related to her work.
Boniswa, not knowing what to do, turned to a friend for advice.
I'm just glad I didn't get hurt.
Are you kidding? Of course you got hurt. I mean, just look at you for starters. You're not even sure if you should be going back to work. This is a mess, baby girl.
Nyansil, it's a freaking mess.
Oh my word. I can't believe I didn't think of this sooner. Jonga up. A Commission for Gender Equality Act.
So what now? Some second? What if I don't believe you? He's my boss, Lulu. It's his word against mine. What if they think I was bribing him or something?
Who's they? The court. Please. Of course they'll believe you. Firstly, because it's true. And secondly, because he's a low-life, dirty scumbag. Okay, so it says that all you have to do is fill in this online question thingy. Yeah. See, I have been discriminated against because of my pregnancy, marital status, gender. Tick.
There. I have been sexually harassed. Tick that one.
Oh my word. It says they'll provide you with a lawyer should you need one. My friend, it is on.
In terms of the Equality Act, Chapter 9 institutions such as the Human Rights Commission are meant to provide assistance to parties. So very often a party can go directly to a Chapter 9 institution before coming to court. The Chapter 9 institution then can go to court in the name of the party or on behalf of the party. Or the court can ask a Chapter 9 institution to provide some kind of assistance during the proceedings. So Chapter 9 institutions play quite a pivotal role in giving effect to the objectives of the Act.
Coming up, Boniswa faces Munwabisi in the Equality Court.
These infringements violate the applicant's right to human dignity and equality, as enshrined in the Constitution and protected by the Act.
The Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act gives effect to the constitutional right to equality. The Act aims to assist South Africa's transformation to a united, non-racial and non-sexist society where all may flourish. The Equality Act prohibits unfair discrimination on the grounds listed in Section 9 of the Constitution, which include race, gender, sex, pregnancy, marital status, ethnic or social origin, color, sexual orientation, age, disability, religion, conscience, belief, culture, language and birth.
South African society was characterized by a particularly crude system of inequality and racial discrimination. And so after 1994, there was clearly a recognition that we needed to put in place mechanisms that would advance meaningful and substantive equality for the majority of people. And the Equality Act is one such measure. It's an attempt really to correct the imbalances of the past and I suppose to create a society where every individual could have the equal opportunity to attain his or her potential. At the same time, it would be designed to ensure that acts of unfair discrimination were prohibited and dealt with and corrective measures could be put in place. So in a sense, that's the genesis of the Equality Act and broadly the kind of social objective that it seeks to achieve, a society based on equality, dignity, justice and human rights.
The state promulgated an act called the Promotion and Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination. And in terms of this act, courts are established which look into the issues of discrimination, and they are normally referred to as equality courts. And that is the purpose of the act and the act that actually establishes these equality courts.
This was the first time Boniswa had seen Munwabisi since their last encounter.
Good afternoon. I want to start by saying that when interpreting legislation, every court must promote the spirit, the purport, and the objectives of the Bill of Rights. Meaning in this instance that we must remain focused on the Equality Act and how it protects the constitutional right to equality. This is a process of education, and we must not lose sight of the fact. The reason I've chosen this informal setting is that I'm exercising my discretion regarding the nature of this case. This is a day of learning, and there's no need for the formalities of the courtroom. Try to think of this as a conversation. Professor Tembelani Njana has joined us here as the court assessor. He's the senior lecturer in gender studies at the University of Cape Town, and because I'm no authority on the issue at hand, his valuable expertise will help me in making my decision. All right? Ms. Hendricks, please proceed.
Well, the idea of establishing equality courts was to distinguish them from the ordinary courts. You don't need a lawyer to go to the equality courts. The structure of the courts is such that equality clerks are established, are appointed at each court. And the role of the equality court clerk is to assist the member of the public in terms of formulating the complaint, in terms of assisting the person in ensuring that person can participate in the proceedings. The idea is to the extent that it's possible, to dispense with the unnecessarily formalistic rules. So simply in terms of the court layout, there's no need for the presiding officer to sit above, for example, the participants. They could sit around a table. The presiding officer could engage the participants in terms of questions to understand the issues. That does not mean that justice is not dispensed or that fairness doesn't prevail. It's just to, in a sense, ensure that justice can be served by ensuring that the parties' views are properly canvassed, and the presiding officer has the kind of powers to ensure that that happens.
The general system our courts follow is that of an adversarial one. Basically what this means is that if there are two opposing sides, the two opposing sides stand adversely to one another, and in the middle is a judge or a presiding officer who technically oversees, manages this interplay, and arrives at a decision. An inquisitorial system, on the other hand, is a slightly more permissive role for the judge. The judge descends into the arena, so to speak, and the judge is permitted to be actively part of this inquiry to establish both the facts, the circumstances, and all the issues necessary to enable him or her to arrive at a decision.
The Equality Act provides that a presiding officer may call in an assessor. And in practice, it would depend on the complexity of the matter. So a presiding officer may say, well, I need some expertise. So assessors play a vital role in a sense of bringing in expertise, but sometimes also just bringing in the voice of the community.
What happened after that?
I ran away. I heard him shout something like, I wouldn't do that if I were you, but I can't be sure.
Had he given you any indication of his intentions before this incident? At work, perhaps?
No, just the way he looked at me. Even in my job interview, I remember feeling very uncomfortable.
This case fundamentally involves infringements of the Equality Act, namely that the respondent's actions show complete disregard for the applicant's right to be free of harassment and unfair discrimination, particularly on the ground of gender. Taken together, these infringements violate the applicant's right to human dignity and equality, as enshrined in the Constitution and protected by the Act.
Ms. Ngenje, if my client made you feel so uncomfortable, why did you accept an invitation for a private dinner at his home?
I thought, I don't know. He was my boss. I didn't want to be rude. And I thought you wanted to talk about work.
You stand to win quite a bit of money from this trial, don't you, Ms. Ngenje?
Sorry?
Are you serious? Extortion? Really?
Yes, really. I mean, it's not beyond the realm of possibility here.
Be very careful here, Mr. Mgudu.
Mr. Day, she's a young girl with substantial debt. She has unpaid university fees and overdrawn accounts in almost every other department. Is it unlikely that my client was not seen as a way out of debt?
Ms. Ngenje, how much do you still owe in outstanding debt?
I think it's about 15,000 rand.
Mr. Day, We did a credit check on Ms. Ngenje, and she has almost 20,000 rands in outstanding debt.
Sex is not just about the physiological contact. It's about power and assuming that because you are the boss in this environment, you can do anything that you want to do with this person. But I also think that South Africa is a patriarchal society and has been for a very long time. And I think that men who are in positions of power have always had this attitude that they can command in the boardroom and they can command everything that is in the building, including the sexuality of young women or of women who are working for them.
The secretary and the boss, that is an even power. And sometimes it results into abusive situation where you'll find that because, for example, the secretary is just sitting there and cannot do anything to the boss. And the environment also where that secretary finds herself or himself, you find that you can't even raise this with other people because you are scared that you might be victimized after raising those issues. So those are the challenges that that we're facing. That in uneven power, it results into abuse.
Coming up, after Magudu's attempt to discredit Boniswa, will Hendricks be able to win back favor?
If she knew anything about business, she would know. It's part of my job to watch people.
What about her allegations that you stared at her in the workplace?
If she knew anything about business, she would know. It's part of my job to watch people. I'm a boss. I have to make sure that everyone is doing their job. It's not my fault humans use their eyes to see.
Given the nature of your industry in which long hours are standard, is it possible that she may have misinterpreted the situation?
Of course, she misinterpreted it. I'm not that kind of...
Mr. Magudu, I'm struggling to see how your points of defense relate to the relevant sections of the Equality Act.
Well, I didn't really concentrate on the Act.
You didn't concentrate on the Equality Act? In the Equality Court?
No, well,
Do you have any further questions for Mr. Mayeza?
No.
Mr. Mayeza, on the night in question, you implied that Ms. Njenge's job would be in jeopardy if she did not sleep with you.
That was a joke. I was just trying to get her to relax.
Is that also the reason for the wine and the kiss?
But I was in my own home.
Mr. Mayeza, it's not necessary to be so evasive. Please answer the question.
In an equality court where the court is faced with irreconcilable versions and there are no witnesses to the event, the normal system kicks in, as with any court which is faced with two opposing versions. The court then looks at the probabilities of whether the conduct complained of took place and has to weigh the two versions together, and based on whatever is stated by either side, to come to a determination as to which version, under the circumstances, is the most probable. If, on the other hand, the court is completely unable to make a decision, it will have to make that call and say, I'm not in a position to accept the one version over the other. And in the absence of evidence, a benefit of doubt has to be given. And the one who is charged will be accorded the benefit of doubt.
1 week later, the group reconvened to hear Magistrate Day's final verdict.
After speaking with the SSA, it became clear to me that the complainant's young age, compared to the respondents, together with his senior position in the production company, clothed him with a power base from which he could deny her the access to opportunities in the future. This violated her constitutional rights.
The respondent was found guilty of sexually harassing Boniswa in contravention of the provisions of the Equality Act.
I hereby order you, Mr. Mayeza, to pay compensation to the applicant in the sum of 9,000 rand in cash.
In addition, Munwabisi was ordered to refrain from harassing Boniswa in future and to give her an unconditional apology in writing.
When the Equality Court is approached on the basis that one has either been unfairly discriminated against or sexual harassment. The aim of the court is to protect society from such conduct. It is also intended to assuage the feelings of the person who has been hurt by the conduct complained of. So the court can order that whoever has been found guilty of an offense in terms of the act provide an apology and even determine the form of apology. The court can also award damages. Again, it goes to assuaging my feelings, what the court thinks is an appropriate amount to compensate me for the pain and the humiliation I probably would have suffered as a result of the conduct of the offender.
On the one hand, you've got to deal with the particular act of discrimination and find a remedy for that individual. But on the other hand, can you put in place measures that would protect people in future from acts of discrimination and ensure that the offending party takes measures to ensure that there will not be a recurrence?
I think that the best option perhaps is for women to be empowered, to empower themselves, to be able to say no, but also to establish systems that ensure that women are not made to be victims in this way at work, and that there's a support system in the corporate environment where they are working.
Unfair discrimination should be taken quite seriously, because for 350 years in this country, unfair discrimination was legalized. People were excluded from all kinds of opportunities for reasons of immaterial consequence, the color of their skin, the texture of their hair. And a new society committed to social justice, committed to equality, committed to freedom, must have both the political and the legal commitment to ensure that every person has the opportunity to achieve their full potential. And therefore, taking a strong stand against unfair discrimination does two things, I think. On the one hand, it says to people who are the victims of unfair discrimination, you have recourse and you have remedies. But broadly, it says to the society at large, you will not be permitted to conduct yourself in this way again. The institutions and the individuals of society are required to bring to their work and to their lives that commitment to equality. And I think that's a wonderful objective to achieve. Difficult in practice, but certainly a worthwhile ideal to continue fighting for.
To lodge a complaint at the Equality Court, go to your nearest magistrate's court and speak to the Equality Clerk. The clerk will assist you to fill out a form that gives details of your complaint and the name and particulars of the person against whom you are making the complaint, called the respondent. To lodge a complaint, you must at least have the name of the respondent. It is even better if you have that person's address. Proceedings in the Equality Court are free of charge, and you may be provided with legal representation if necessary. The final verdict was brought to you by SABC together with the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development.